Hey everyone, welcome to UNIQUEWAYS with Thomas Girard, a more than audio podcast. We're here in Vancouver, Canada, in the podcast recording studio in Canby Village. Really great guest here today. I'm super excited to be here. So I'll describe her. She explores the spaces inherently found correlating within certain dichotomies like self-other, temporal timeless, truth fiction, and right and wrong. Resultantly, her practices focuses on the inner and outer connections that can be made, pushing at the edges of the barriers surrounding sticky subjects like trauma, identity, love, and death. Please join me in welcoming Angela Fama. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Thomas.
Ready for returning to the 20 questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Kapow!
Great. Question one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Okay, I am an artist, so an interdisciplinary, intersectionally focused artist, social practice. I also have training as a death doula. I also create a death game where I instigate and facilitate conversations on death, so I guess I'm a death conversationalist. I also have a long-standing history as a commercial photographer, but as an artist, these days it's mostly artist and doula, like a death conversationalist.
Great. Just to note for you guys, Angela was an early supporter of the audio podcast, so you can check out her first episode there to follow up with this. But we actually met at a TEDx event where we were both speakers and kind of kept in touch after that in some ways. So yeah.
I remember your talk. If you haven't seen that yet, go check out his talk. Yeah.
Okay. So number two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
Okay. I find it hard to narrow that down. I was thinking about this one in terms of intersectionalism and how we're humans and we're also interrelated and so connected. So I could say my upbringing or my background but if I think about myself and what I had no idea how I was born. I think I got a lot of, I don't know if even mojo is the right word. I looked this one up to be like, what does it actually mean? Where does it come from? Am I appropriating something?
Mm.
But I've got a lot of fire, or I guess desire to live, and it pushes me to do things that I'm so grateful I don't have to work to find that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I have to work to clarify it for myself, or sometimes it gets depressed
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't want to do the work. But when I'm on the right kind of path and when I'm doing things that really work with my values or my beliefs, it's just like so readily there. And I think that's something I was kind of born with, and I've noticed not everybody has that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like these days, there's so many kind of thoughts and feelings that are now finally, we're having words for those. We're having words to describe those now, where before we didn't really have language for that. And I feel like that's something that you do. You kind of bring that language to a lot of the things that we experience. So number three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Okay, I got. Gave me lots of challenges, but also gave me lots of gifts. I was born in a pretty outside of the system box, and so I was raised without the structure necessarily for a long time, feeling like I needed to fit in the wheel. But within that came a lot of awareness on the importance of having what I do be something I actually want to do. And not want to do as in, here's my things I can do, I'll figure out some way to fit within that, which I have done and had to learn through. But so the kind of works that I do are very socially engaged, but I have to do it from a point where I'm actually just fascinated and interested in what I'm doing. So it's neat what happens when I work like that. The amount of things that it just starts flowing more naturally when I work from that perspective. So that's why I tend to need to give, can I swear? I tend to need to give a shit before I can really work on something that is communal. And those are things that are reciprocally really important to me. So
I was kind of researching you and trying to find clips and stuff like that, things you're talking about, and there's so much press on you. You've had a lot of good coverage, haven't you, as a photographer and as an artist?
Yeah, mostly with the What Is Love project, and as a photographer. It's been a curious learning in itself and I was in a band as well, so there was lots of, it's just learning about what it is on how to, it's the community resource, so learning about how to actually be sincere.
Great. This one that people struggle with is number 4. What does your future look like?
Okay, this one, it's funny because I was like, I didn't actually listen to our first one before coming here because I was like, no, I don't want to but I'm curious now to go back and see how I answered this question. Yeah. But I actually have answers now, which is great. Okay. Post COVID, I was a little hungry to, I guess post-COVID might be a little, not the correct word, but I guess lockdown. I was quite hungry and I feel like I had a lot of old desires that had been growing old. Like I had just finished a BFA, then COVID hit, and I was wanting to go do a bunch of things and got kind of stressed out about that and didn't have much idea what the future was. And right now I'm really investing in community, inward and outward, that's around me, and I'm kind of furthering my education. So right now I'm in a really sweet spot of being able to, I guess it'll come out more probably in other answers, but so my future is more learning, which makes me really happy.
We're at a special time, right? I mean, we're kind of post-pandemic, things like, bringing people into the podcast recording studio is something that I've wanted to do for so long and just haven't been able to kind of really safely do it until now. So I feel like now is just the time when these kinds of things are starting to emerge. I was on a panel last week as well with 100 guests in person, and just so overwhelming, but so much gratitude for that as well. So okay, number 5, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Okay, this one is really important, and I keep saying the words community, but I've gone through a huge, like I said before, I like to be really invested in what I'm actually working through, so I don't really think there's a space between what I'm working on and where my life is. Like, it's all very interrelated and moving parts all the time. So for a little while, I would say I was trying to find location that would suit me better than here. So I was really stuck on, here isn't where I need to be. Because as I get older, I have a lot of memories and body memories. I've had a lot of trauma. So I just have this, I moved here when I was maybe 20 and I thought I was going to move and then move on. So I just had this thing in my head that community was somewhere else. I also never really had a family and home in one place for a long period of time. So it's kind of in my blood to keep moving. So locationality is less about structural, whether it's city or nature. It's more about community. I find location in what I spend my time around and with. I feel like I'm a bit I can only speak for myself, but it's sponge-like, so I have to be very aware of what I have and what I focus on. And right now I'm really thinking about investing in the community that can be found in Vancouver. I'm investing in not just thinking, because I've been here for long enough, I didn't see this. And the more I do that, the more I see it, and the more I get excited about that, and the more my feet feel grounded and excited to be locationally where I am. And because the work I do is so socially engaged, it is always intricate with the space. And I find Vancouver has a lot of that word I always have a hard time saying, diasporic elements to it, and a lot of roots and a lot of moving roots. So it's like looking at how can we find ideas of space and community and belonging and home in that kind of an environment, especially in the time period we're in.
Yeah, with the 2 podcasts now, it's been super interesting to revisit the idea of space. With a really strong New York City presence recently on the audio podcast with Timothy Goodman and Debbie Millman, and then kind of coming into this in-person space, thinking it was going to be Vancouver people, but then having Keith Tam, who is in town from Hong Kong, come into the space and come on the show. Shrishti Kulkarni came over from the island to be here for recording. So starting to realize that maybe just because I'm in Vancouver doesn't mean it's going to only be Vancouver, which is super interesting, I think.
Before you jump in the next, I want to follow on that. Because also with that awareness for me of I can actually what does it feel like to think of home as attached to a place? I used to think of it as something we travel with just inside ourselves, and it's with us where we go. But part of that being able to sit here is that recognition that the things that interest me personally, where I feel community, is pretty. I've been doing it for a long time, so there's a lot of like outside the box, and it's a global web. And that's something that I've appreciated the digital world for, is that ability. Like, one of my best friends lives in Brighton, UK, and we talk once a week. And I feel connected. There is home there. So that ability to be able to find that subversive community through this kind of medium really excites me. So it's like, it doesn't feel as disconnected or dissociated as it used to. So I can actually feel connected to a much larger, like what you were saying. So another thing I want to acknowledge is land acknowledgement. I'm on the territory, the ancestry territory of the UNIQUEWAYS, and 3 of them. Squamish, and I want to say that with acknowledgement that I am in a settler body that is totally disconnected from any heritage. I've never met my father, and I don't really know my own matriarchal family all that well. So I've had to work to build an idea of identity or home, feeling like I've always been on ground that I have my values and conscious feel kind of a bit odd, owning as a land for me to be on. I also had the curious experience of spending my teenage years in rural Zimbabwe, which at the time I didn't know so much about land and that kind of colonialization, and but now, so when I think about, I guess that's why I focus so much on community. And being really conscious and aware of who I'm connecting with, and then knowing each person's story about how they connect with the land that we're on. So that's really important to me.
I faced that recently. I was at a conference in Lisbon a couple of weeks ago, and before I went, I was thinking about what I was going to talk about there. And I was thinking, do I do a land acknowledgement? Does it make sense to be acknowledging a land from Lisbon, which is in Vancouver? But it seems like the trend is to do it anyways, right? So.
And I think it's part of when I first started hearing them, I was like, what is it? We're just saying words. But I think, again, if we talk about times changing, and earlier we were kind of referencing somatics and sciences connecting, I think it's part of breaking down that structure that separates that. So I hope it's, worth it to be acknowledging that. Yeah, it feels right in me when I like, it feels odd when I don't. So
I have a kind of a dad with some old-timey ideas, and I was talking to him, and I was like, so at a conference, if I'm doing a talk, do I do a land acknowledgement? And he said, well, if there are no native people in the audience, then there's no reason to do it. It doesn't make sense. But it's just that kind of generational shift that we also experience these days quite a bit. It's interesting.
And having compassion for where anyone's at with that, even the fact that he said that then opens, well, actually, why do you think that? Why do you think it might be a benefit to say it? It's like, who is the acknowledgement actually for? How, it can mean very different things depending on what room it's in, and that's kind of why I appreciate it.
I agree. Number 6, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
Love yourself. Yeah. I'm not in any way, I wouldn't be like, oh, I wish I'd done that. Like, I'm so grateful for all the fuck-ups I've had in my life, for all the learning, for all the, I've done a lot of things where I was like, God, I wish I could have just believed in myself more. But I don't even know if it's that, just that feeling inside myself of just loving myself. Who else, like, it's just amazing how deeply ingrained it is within our culture to not do that. And by our, I mean Western culture, so that might not be, everyone integrates with that in different ways.
Well, it's so interesting, right? Like the idea of Western culture and the dominance of Western culture, but then the kind of global, like the social media sphere and how that talks about place and returning to that place idea. The kind of chaos of it all, and the kind of the kind of no answer for any question kind of idea that kind of falls into place and makes this podcast work in the way that it does. So what's a day in your life like?
Well, right now I would say I'm actually kind of living the dream. I'm able to, I'm working on year 2 of a Canada Council grant for research and creation, and I'm working on a very, very multi-discipline, multimedia project, talking about regenerating ideas of identity post-trauma through engaging with autobiographical self-narratives. So last year I was working on the first part of this project. I didn't know it was going to get a second year, and I want to just say with gratitude, thank you to all the people that are in my life that had to be with me through that, because going into your own traumas and regenerating narratives can be quite re-traumatizing. But it's also been probably the most personal, like directly personal work that I've done that is with the end goal of connecting community. So a day in my life can travel between all the multitudinous ways of working on that project. So I had the joy of, what did I do yesterday? I woke up and I drew, I did some drawing, and then I did some digital work for, part of it is kind of a graphic novel art book, and then sound, so just a lot of moving parts. And the living the dream is that now I'm on the year 2, it's not as shocking for me to be doing this. There's so many parts about Grant I've never had that kind of place to work within, so imposter syndrome was just like right over my shoulder. But it's not directly about society and community. So yeah, so the day in my life right now is I'm literally just doing what I want to be doing every day, and choosing how to do that in the space that I move within that. So
for those in the audience who don't know about Canada Council, it's a huge kind of supportive effort for artists in Canada, and it's I think maybe it's a myth. The myth is that you can't get a Canada Council grant unless you've got one before. It's like very difficult to get one the first time. So that's like actually a big achievement, isn't it?
First time, yeah. And I would say with joy for people that are listening, I had 2 women that I went to school with. We worked together. We went to actually a grant writing class. Like I put a lot, like I want to say it wasn't just handed to me. I put a lot of work into this. I actually took the same grant writing class 7 years ago. Didn't get any grants in it. And this time we worked really hard together to edit each other's, and again, community. Like I could not have done this without them. And then the same thing happened this time around with a different, same duo but another woman, and each time 2 of us have gotten it.
Nice.
And it's a research creation, and I really did, like even if I hadn't gotten it, I really appreciated the process of learning what I needed to learn to articulate myself like that. So yeah, it's been amazing, and the hardest thing I've ever done. Like working on it too, like being self-directed. Usually when I work on my projects, I am the one paying for it, or Kickstarter. Like I'm doing this, like I really hate commercialization of the artwork for myself, so that when I work on my fine art projects or my social practice projects, it's never been attached to money. And this time I was all of a sudden like, oh my god, now it has to be of a monetary value because I'm getting paid to do it. So it's been a process. So I'm excited now that it's starting to feel really good. Whereas before it was like, I'm in hell. This shouldn't. Why did I work so hard to get this? But you know, anything in life ebbs and flows in how we learn and how we grow. So I'm so grateful, and again, I'm so grateful for the people that were supporting me through that as well.
I did my master's during pandemic and got a graduate fellowship. First I got a half graduate fellowship, and I was like, okay, that covers tuition, so I don't have to be like overly grateful. But then I got a second one, and it was a full graduate scholarship or fellowship, and when I got that, I was like, what should I buy? And then the guilt kind of comes in afterwards. You're like, oh, what should I buy? Do you know what I mean? Like, actually, what am I supposed to do with this money? Super interesting.
So as I was saying that I've been doing what I want as life. Like when I was younger, I was a commercial photographer, had the car accident, and then committed my life to working in my arts, doing things that didn't make me feel like I was using my skills at something I didn't believe in. But having the grant, it was hard, because then all of us, like as a photographer, I learned like, okay, I need to just enjoy my life. I shouldn't be stressed out all the time about whether I'm going to survive or not. I'm choosing what I'm doing. I've been okay so far. But with the grant, it was true. It's like, should I buy food for myself, or should I use this it needs to go directly? It's like, no, part of it was to help you eat while you're doing this project. It's okay.
That's so funny.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
No, it's true. You have to wonder about these. So I think we're at number 8. Lifelong learning is a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Yeah, I am. That's my I had a dear friend do a video project once where she was doing lifelong learning about making video works, and she actually, the theme was me getting all excited about being a lifelong learner. And that was when I went back to Emily Carr as a mature student. And right now I'm actually taking prereqs in psychology to potentially do a master's in counseling psychology.
Okay.
But I was deeply looking into social practice overseas as a master's, and then realized I think I want to do a master's in the arts and psychology, and then do my own social, like, interdisciplinary way of, again, changing the molds that sit between somatics and cognitive understandings. But I also, right now I'm learning dance again and taking guitar classes, so I also am pretty active in wanting to stay up to date with evolving. So intersectionalism, I would say I had an unstated undergrad in feminism when I was at UNIQUEWAYS, and I'm of much gratitude of what you can learn from queer theory, what you can learn from how the world is changing, and I think it's the new punk rock, and I'm so into how do we do that with loving interconnected ways where we're acknowledging where everybody is, and listening. So I'm so into learning. That's my passion for life, I think.
Great. What tools do you use? Are you both digital and analog?
Yeah, definitely. I have a Hasselblad and a digital camera, and I'm online and I'm drawing. I really love interweaving. Yeah.
Okay. How do you deal with work-life balance?
I already answered that. I've managed to find a way to have work and life be intertwined.
Okay. If you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
I honestly can't. That was a question I thought I am doing what I want to be doing.
Great. What would you not like to do with your career?
Things that I moved myself out of when I was younger, and I'm really proud of myself for making that decision. So moving out of using my skills to help further feed the capitalist, commoditizing, colonial, like, just, I know where I know I can't, I live in it here, but I do my part to really make sure the actions I'm taking and what I put my passion into are things that can help connect and share, as opposed to just money. Yeah, I think living in Zimbabwe helped with that at the age that I was, like an early teen, really rural, and just helped me learn that the root of, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the needs we have to feel, is really simple. I don't need much, and that's a focus to not get, because it's hungry, it's out there. I walk down the street and suddenly I want to buy something, you know. And so it's a constant daily practice of recommitting to the arts, and because that's where I fit in and always have. So yeah.
I worked in a lumberyard / hardware store when I was growing up, because it's kind of the family thing to do. And I just remember kind of watching the clock, you know, like 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. It's just excruciating. Don't want to do that.
Here at 9, it's 9:05. It's 9:06. It's 9:07.
It feels like it should be, you know, 5:30, but it's not.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, what would you like? Oh, sorry. What would you not like to do? We did that. So, what's your favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I love quotes. It's so hard. For the book project that I'm working on, I don't know if I'm going to include them, but I actually found like a stack of quotes I've just compiled over the years. So I'm gonna, without getting all heady or like, I know I want this quote to represent my identity forever. In this moment of time, the one that is running through my head a lot is actually a quote from a Lucinda Williams song from her early 90s album Car Wheels on a Gravel Road. And the quote is, "Could tell a lie, but my heart would know." And when I think about like investing in myself or investing in community, I think it really does, and that really basic needs. If I think about it, it intertwines into everything. So if I'm saying yes to a job, my heart knows if I'm not doing what I believe. But then if I take that job, I've got this little bit of ick in me, and then that ick is what I'm feeding when I'm at that job. And then there's a little bit more ick in the world because I didn't really hear myself the way I need to. So I'm using that to go well beyond just interpersonal, but it's in there as well, of course. It's my job to listen. The best way I can be in community is to be loving myself and hearing myself. Yeah.
Great, okay. What's your least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I think it might be the same one I said last. It's a little bit of like I was thinking I don't actually have much, like I try not to think too much about what I don't like that other people, like there's a lot in the world that I could get lost in that feeling of not liking. But I have a hard tolerance when people choose ignorance. So when someone says something like, I know this is a bad joke, but that really, it's like, I don't even know how do I work with that? Like, I know this is kind of a racist joke, but I'm like, oh wow, you just said you know that you're being offensive and now you're going to force me to listen to your, what? So that kind of thing, I have a hard time. Yeah, that's my least, that I can think, like there's a lot of things that people say that I really don't like and I have to really work to quotes. I'm like, oh, okay, what patriarchal time zone did you pull that one from? Like, so I have to really be careful. Yeah.
It's all about how you orient yourself, isn't it? Yeah. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what word would you choose?
I don't know if I can pick one. I've got 3.
Okay.
So curious. I have to present. So that's something I really try and work to do. And then the third one, I'm not doing any short answers today. The third one I have I'm curious about, because in the past it was one I was really attaching to. And I'm going to give 2 examples for why I think it's great and why I'm challenging it right now.
Great.
So resilient.
Okay.
And that is something I definitely think how I can even be sitting here with you today is resiliency. I've had a lot of things that I've witnessed cap off a lot of people in their lives. But I was doing Groundswell for Community Leadership. It's a sort of an alternative business school in Vancouver. And one of the exercises we did, it was during COVID time, was we asked people around us what traits we have that they admire and what traits we have they don't really. And it was to actually help you see that the ones that kind of bother or frustrate people are often very connected to the ones that people are inspired by. And resilient was one that more often than not was said in the people in my community, and I'm really proud of my ability to change, to regenerate, to be resilient. But then I actually just watched a disabilities workshop from the same organization, so this is a couple years later, that was talking about how resilient can be a bit of not an insult, but like, for me, I've had a lot of things I've had to learn to live through, and my body, I've had to really, it's not a choice, it's something I have had to do. So resilience wasn't really oh, you're so resilient. Like, it can be quite demeaning when you say it to someone. Oh, look at you, now you can be just like me. Aren't you resilient? You know, so there's something in there where it's wanting, again, making sure what the intentionality is for myself. Like, so I could say a word to describe myself might be strong or courageous, you know, but I like resilient. So
it's a good one. Yeah, you're always kind of, when you talk to someone, you're kind of building a world for them, right? That you kind of build this container so you can understand them. But then if they only exist within that container, it can be very limited. Okay, so what keeps you up at night?
I'm going to say with gratitude right now, I'm sleeping.
Nice.
It's taken a few years.
Final stretch, was a dream you're chasing?
Dream I'm chasing. I'm living the dream right now. So the dream I'm chasing, and then I got one of those reminders that it's about being where you are right now, because as soon as you get what you're chasing, it's got its challenges. It's got, you know, so I would say I'm chasing the dream to be in the moment. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
What inspires you?
People and life, living change. So watching nature and knowing the people are part of nature. So, but really actively right now, the people around me I find really inspiring. So I'm going to give an example of 2 separate and long answers today. I love it.
I like it. Yeah.
So one dear friend that I actually met at Emily Carr, we've become, she's a beloved. She's in Germany right now doing a workshop on the importance of autobiography, which is ironic that we're both working on the similar things at the same time. And I find her so inspiring in her work that she does, but also just in who she is as a person. So she inspires me to see myself more clearly. Recently something happened where she was learning some things about herself, and I did research to love her by learning what she was learning about, and then learned that I'm the same thing. It was about neurodivergency. So just learning more about myself through that, but without that being the intention at all, and that to me is really fucking inspiring. And then another beloved who's been supporting me through this project and in life, I've just watched them sort of come out in like a fine arts practice from using mediums in a totally new way, so working with ceramics in a way that that when I see what he's created, I'm really impressed and really inspired. So it keeps me remembering about that simplicity of just trusting your body and working organically with what you are inspired by in yourself, and how exciting that can be, and how again, when I talked about like trusting yourself, you bring that excitement into the world, you bring that energy into the world. That's really, really fucking inspiring. So people, these days.
You know, in my master's, I also had a thread to do with autobiography and memoir and life writing. I did the program called Graduate Liberal Studies at Simon Fraser University, just a nod to them. And Oxford Centre for Life Writing was a partner with what we were doing, so we got to go pretty in depth with what that all meant. And you know, I had never known that something like autobiography could not necessarily be about you or about a person at all, or about any perspective or anything. It's just kind of coming from you, and that's what makes it what it is. So.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. Yeah, it's been interesting for me to work and engage with autobiography. I was looking at it a lot about memory and identity from a car accident, brain injury that started the whole death talk, but looking at it from a perspective of, again, who we are is based on memory, which is based on interaction, which is based on everything else around us. And I love the perspective that you just brought in about that it really is, it's about everything. Like it's not about who are we exist within each other. So where is that, like sharing that kind of communication, articulating that? I'm going to have to pick your brain for some of those resources.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Any advice you'd like to share?
I think the same thing. Maybe it's going to sound like I'm using capitalist words, but I currently am living in a city, or the world right now does work in that manner. So I'm gonna, if I think about metaphors we live by, I'm gonna take that into my little world and say, invest in yourself. So whether that's time, whether that's money, whether that's care, whether that's attention. And I really do believe that each individual has that integrated, interwoven. So if you are really hearing and caring and investing in what your need, I don't know what anybody else needs. So to advise someone else, or advise someone on what I think they should, it's more about take the time to hear what you have and feed that. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and how can our listeners keep tabs on you? What should we check out? What's our call to action for you?
Okay. Favorite part. Not. I have a website, angelafama.com. I'm actually pretty easy to find with Facebook, Instagram, website. It's all just my name altogether. And then I've also got Death Conversation Game. So again, that's pretty easy to find. Instagram, online, website. Right now I have, should I mention something that's coming up, or I'm not sure about time?
Absolutely.
Okay, so June 10th, I'm doing an interactive death conversation and a collage postcard workshop, integrating arts and feelings. So we're going to start with the death conversation and then move into making postcards with whatever medium you feel inspired by, with the intention of maybe thinking about someone you love and sending that thought to them. Because I mean, if we're talking about death, life and love and death are really intertwined. So I mean, people can make postcards about whatever they want. Whatever's coming out after talking about death, bring it on. But that will be with Shannon Paolo at this _ gallery on Main in Chinatown. Okay. So you can find information about that on the Death Conversation Game website or on Instagram.
Great.
Yeah. So
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's so great to have you on. On the surface, it sounds like what's supposed to be understood is that you're an artist or a photographer, but you bring so much depth and so much richness to that. And I think a lot of artists kind of try to bring that depth and richness and language to that, but you do it in a very kind of authentic and engaging way. So it's a pleasure to sit down with you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for listening. I look forward to hearing other conversations that you're having.
Great, thanks.